In a move that surprises little to nobody, but still brings up a bunch of outrage, the Supreme Court strikes down affirmative action, at the very least in college applications. So we'll be talking about that, some of the reaction to that, and some of the ways that some of the left-wing colleges are still going to try to skirt around that. And that is probably going to be the majority of the show today. So we'll spend a lot of time on that. But in other news, the president gives a speech touting Bidenomics, although a new poll shows that just 34% of people approve of his handling of the economy. So we'll go over what the economy is doing, where we go from there, and what it means for the rest of the country to be under a Bidenomic system. The Parkland School Resource Deputy who ran away from Nicholas Cruz all the way back in 2018 gets cleared on all charges in a Florida court today, so we'll be talking about that and where we go from there. And DeSantis comes over and tries to win over the populace by saying that he would eliminate 4 federal agencies if elected. It is going to be all of this and more, plus things that I like and things that I hate over here on Contemporary. So get some snacks, grab some friends, get into the live chat, and I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, I can buy myself flowers and write my own name in the sand, but it still feels nice if you guys would leave a tip or a sub, or the Mogwai has actually been the rock star this month and throwing out the gift subs over on any of the platforms that you have the ability to leave anything like that. I am demonetized permanently, and that is by my own choice over on YouTube, so I don't want anybody to see an ad over on YouTube. I know that that kind of does algorithmically demote me, but also we haven't grown enough for any sort of super chat over there. But we've got the, like, you can throw bits over on Twitch if that's your thing. Rumble is always a good one if you guys want to throw a tip over there. You guys can do so. Kick, I don't know how that works yet. You guys can do so. Oh, that's me. That's my voice. I don't know how it works over on Kick yet, but if you guys do want to go try that out, kick.com/jadgar101 and see how that works over there. I think as of right now you can chat there amongst each other, but you can't see each other's chats. But you can go back and do that. I've shut down most of my payment processors, like Buy Me a Coffee. Just it didn't do anything, and everything is locked up in a Payoneer account that has a minimum withdrawal. So I'm probably going to lose those $100 that's or not quite $100 that's over on Payoneer from Buy Me a Coffee, but I will have to check in on that at some point there. But yeah, anything that you guys want to do to come back and help out, that's big, that's huge. I always look forward to that. And like, I'm not hurting right now, but every little bit helps as we try to build a better news experience. But we do have a lot to go over here tonight, quite a bit actually compared to what I thought it was going to be going into a holiday weekend. And remember, by the way, anything we don't get to tonight is going to be almost a week old when we come back, because for one of the first times in a very, very long time, I'm taking off from Contemporary without having somebody to back up. I know that we did that for 2 weeks while I was moving, but yeah, no Friday show because of travel time, and no Monday show because of travel as well. So I do hope to see you back here on Tuesday. I'll promise I'll get done before the fireworks start going off, so hope to see you guys there. Otherwise, we're going to get right into it. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. Go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. Stop getting your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house and people who hate you. Start getting your news and your culture from people who are just like you. Go check out all that great programming. It's going to be a great time. Let's get into it, and we will go, by the way, for the full 2 hours. I apologize for starting late today. I got home, I set up some laundry, and I sat down on the couch for just a minute, and I kind of passed out. And didn't get back up until 5:45, which at that point it's go back and gather up all the news about affirmative action and everything else that happened throughout the day. Plus, and I was actually just about to get started. I actually made a record time getting the news done up, and then I remembered things I like and things that I hate, and I had a list, but I just had to get it all transferred over. It was a mess, but I got the laundry in. I got some things going on with that, so we can get that set up, and let's get into the news. Let's get started. Let's get the live chats up here. Let's see what you guys are doing and saying over here. A few people watching over on Rumble. Thank you, Rumblers over there. I think mostly I get lurkers on Rumble, but you guys are always welcome. And by the way, do go check us out over on the audio platforms. The easiest way to find us is to go into Spotify, which seems to be the most popular, and type in Contemporary with J. Edgar. And it'll pop right up with the exact title. All right, let's get over onto the Rumble. I got that up there with the view counter. Let's get the main chat up here, see who's going on with that, and let's get started. And we're going to start today, as we always do, with the finance. The final finance of the first half of the year, by the way. There is one more trading day, but I won't be here for it, unfortunately. All right. Let's have a look at the Dow. The Dow spent the day up. Enough to erase yesterday's losses, definitely. The Dow is at 34,122.42. That is up 269.76 points, or 0.8% on the day. It jumped up and it stayed up. So those of you who have your 401k in the Dow, good on you. I don't trust this to stay up right now, but we will see what happens with that and where that goes. Looking in at your Bitcoin, which also took a moderate winning day today. Bitcoin is at $30,438 and 20 US cents. That is up $348 and 50 US cents, or give or take about 1%, 1.16 if you're looking for specifics on the rise in your Bitcoin on the day. Looking at the gas prices in Madison, which, well, except for the fact that I've vowed never to spend money in the Madison area, in the county that Madison is in, most likely where I'm going to be at the point where I got to stop for fuel. On the way out tomorrow, 3:30 out on the west side for Madison, which means it looks like it is starting to drop out a little bit coming into the holiday weekend. At 3:30 on the east side, with a 3:20 outlier at both the BP and the Quick Trip. 3:30 on the Isthmus, 3:29 entering the Isthmus. And the Shell sitting up at 3:40. So remember, these gas prices do not reflect your local gas prices. Check your local listings to see what your gas prices are. However, I give you every day a pattern so you can start to see and follow, and hopefully this goes, especially if it's going in this slightly downward direction, this follows up in your local area. Let's grab our finance report from IBD for the day, which I've got to refresh because they put the big advertisement in there, but you can't see anything because I don't have a high enough resolution video card. Dow Jones rallies as Fed rate hike odds rise with inflation. Report due, Apple nears $3 trillion market cap, from Ed Carson. Dow futures were little changed after hours, along with the S&P and the NASDAQ. A key inflation report is on tap as markets start to price in 2 more Fed rate hikes this year. Nike reported mixed earnings late. Apple got a new street high price target as it nears $3 trillion in valuation. The market rally had a mixed session as Treasury yields jumped in the latest batch of stronger than expected economic data. The Dow and the Russell 2000 rallied, with financials leading the way after the 23 largest banks passed annual reserve stress tests. Oh good, we're counting on the Federal Reserve to tell us that the banks are doing well. Industrial stocks also did well. The Nasdaq edged lower. Visa blasted above its 50-day line, flashing an early entry. MasterCard is also actionable. JP Morgan rebounded just above a proper buy point. Rambus rebounded bullishly, offering an aggressive entry. General Electric is also actionable. The Personal Consumer Expenditures Price Index, the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, is due out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday. Economists see the overall PCE price index rising just 0.1% in May, bringing the PCE inflation rate down to 3.8 from April's 4.1. The core PCE price index is expected to climb 0.4 once again, leaving the core PCE inflation rate at about 4.7%. And that's important to look. The regular PCE weighed against the core PCE because that means that your food prices are still rising faster than your finished goods. And again, what have I been saying for the last few weeks? I mean, truck prices are going down, tires are going down, TV prices are going down because people aren't buying them at the raised prices that they were up from when inflation was in effect. They just sit on the shelves and they don't make anybody money when they just sit on the shelf. Meanwhile, Fed Chief Jerome Powell has highlighted the importance of serving prices. Excluding energy and housing, the PCE inflation report follows a number of surprisingly strong U.S. economic reports, including solid durable goods orders, blowout new home sales, a sharp drop in weekly jobless claims, and upward revised Q1 GDP growth. Honk honk. At the last Fed meeting, policymakers forecast 2 rate hikes this year. That's what Fed Chief Powell has stressed multiple times. Since then, investors didn't believe there would be a second hike, but these recent economic reports are starting to sway them. Markets have almost locked in a Fed rate hike at the late July meeting. Meanwhile, the odds of another quarter-point hike have risen to nearly 40%, up from less than 20% a week earlier. Keep in mind that while U.S. economic data has come in strong, Chinese and European reports have been weak. A key China manufacturing index is due overnight, with economists betting on a third month of contraction. On the futures, the Dow fell slightly versus the fair value, with Nike stock weighing on blue chips. The S&P edged higher and the Nasdaq rose 0.1%. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. I have never seen Faces of Death, so that comparison is on deaf ears to me, Mogwai. I've only ever seen like 5 movies. It jumped up and it stayed up. It's been since 1985 since Biden has said that, which means it's been that way for Biden for almost my entire life, given the fact that I was born in '84. So that's what we have off of our finance report today. From WMTW out of Maine, out of Portland, Maine. Our layoffs report today. A Maine company cuts hundreds of jobs. From Adam Bartow. Puritan Medical Products, based in Guilford, is cutting jobs. The company, which makes nasal swabs. Hard to imagine you don't need those anymore. The pinko pox is kind of over and expanded significantly during the pinko pox pandemic. Told the state on Wednesday about layoffs in Pittsfield. In a statement, the company said effective the last week of June, Puritan will lay off 272 employees, permanently releasing those on temporary furlough at the company's Pittsfield facilities while also implementing permanent headcount reductions to administrative staff. As part of the restructuring, Puritan will also close its Orlinda, Tennessee facility and consolidate all manufacturing operations to its main facilities. And that's Maine like the state, not Maine like the primary facilities. Although its main facilities are also its main facilities. $4 a.m. tomorrow, Katie. 4 a.m. With having insomnia last night, I don't think I could pull an overnighter. I thought about it until I had insomnia last night. I debated just as soon as Contemporary was over getting in the truck and going. and then sleeping all day in a house full of people. Because I'd get there probably about 10 in the morning. Demand for the pinko pox tests has dropped dramatically in the last several months, and the company blamed that for the cuts. These actions are the latest and hopefully the last measures taken in response to the post-pinko pox downturn, with lower demand for swabs and other products compared to pinko pox-driven peaks. Puritan has implemented these measures aimed at strengthening its operational and financial base, the company said in a statement. So, sorry to those people in Maine and also Tennessee. You're about to lose your job. But that is where we are at for that. Alright, I'm pretty sure I know what you're all here for. It's what I'm here for. It's what all the rest of us are here for. Yeah, but Steven's only got like a 5-hour drive. It's 16 from here. No, 14. It's 16 from my dad's house. Alright, from NPC News. To start off for the day, Supreme Court strikes down college affirmative action programs. Do I do the sounder? No, let's talk about it first. No, you know what? No, we're going to do the sounder. You know, it's actually been a while since we've used that one. This is from Lawrence Hurley at NPC News. The Supreme Court on Thursday struck down affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard in a major victory for conservative activists, ending the systemic consideration of race in the admissions process. The court ruled that both programs violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, which any first-year law student could have told you. You're weighting the rules differently on people because of the color of their skin to make sure that they have opportunities that they normally wouldn't have because of aptitude. And by the way, a wild one where a complete full-out leftist actually said that out loud. I think most people on the left would consider me a Hitler-esque Nazi racist and expect me to say something like that, but I think it's the first tweet that we have coming down here. Yeah. Like actually saying the quiet part out loud on this one. The vote was 6-3 in the UNC case and 6-2 in the Harvard case, in which liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was recused. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to sit back and think about, should I really be weighing on something that's affirmative action when my boss, well, not my boss, I guess it's an independent body, but when the person who put me onto this seat did so by saying that it was going to be a black female and nobody else could do it. Maybe you should have sat that one out. Maybe you kind of should have sat the other one out too, but the decision was hailed by prominent conservatives who say the Constitution should be colorblind, with former President Trump calling the ruling a great day for America. Liberals, however, condemned the ruling, because of course they did, saying affirmative action is a key tool for remedying historic race discrimination. It wasn't perfect, but there's no doubt it helped offer new ladders of opportunity for those who, throughout our history, have too often been denied a chance to show how fast they can climb, said former First Lady Michelle Obama. Joe Biden called the decision a severe disappointment, man, adding that his admin would provide guidance on how colleges could maintain diversity without violating the ruling. So, go around the federal government. Which, boy, you guys hate it when the rest of us do that. I don't know why. I know why it's okay for you guys to do it, but The court effectively overturned the '03 ruling Grutter versus Bollinger, in which the court said race could be considered as a factor in the admissions process because universities had a compelling interest in maintaining a diverse campus, which I don't understand. I don't understand any of that. In doing so, the court scrapped decades of precedent, including one ruling dating back to '78 that upheld a limited consideration of race in university admissions as a way to combat historic discrimination against black people and other minorities. In the majority opinion, Chief Justice John Roberts did not explicitly say the former precedents were overruled, but in a concurring opinion from Clarence Thomas, the second black justice to be appointed to the court, because that's important, said that the Grutter case was, for all intents and purposes, overruled. With KTZed. Roberts wrote that both programs lack sufficiently focused on measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. The ruling exposed stark divisions among the justices who sit on a court that is more diverse than it has ever been. Jackson, the first black woman to serve on the court, wrote in a dissenting opinion that the ruling was truly a tragedy for us all. Sonia Sotomayor, another liberal and the first Hispanic justice, wrote that the court stands in the way and rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress. Sotomayor, in a sign of displeasure, read a lengthy summary of her dissenting opinion in the courtroom. Thomas, a long-term critic of affirmative action, wrote his own 58-page opinion in which he called the programs in question rudderless, race-based preferences designed to ensure a particular racial mix in the entering classes. Yeah, anybody who's ever had to write a college essay could have told you that. Both policies fly in the face of our colorblind Constitution and our nation's equality ideal, he added. While Thomas read his opinion from the bench, Jackson stared straight ahead and appeared visibly angry. We'll be talking about that later. The ruling is another example of the court, which had a 6-3 conservative majority, delivering on the long-held goals of conservative legal activists by overturning the will of liberal legal activists. But see, NPC News won't say that part out loud. It follows in the wake of the seismic ruling in 2022 that overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 decision that guaranteed the right to slaughter your offspring. The court's decision is a major blow to the most selective universities that say some consideration of race is vital in ensuring that they have diverse student bodies. Yeah, but the problem with that is it's not diversity of thought. It's diversity of skin color. They want them to all come in, for the most part, thinking exactly the same way, but all leave thinking completely exactly the same way. The small number of schools that have extremely competitive admissions programs are the most effective. They have predicted that rulings against colleges will lead to significant drop in the enrollment of minority students and require admissions officers to experiment with new race-neutral plans intended to counteract the impact. The vast majority of colleges accept almost all applicants and will not be affected, which actually is also a fair point, because as I've mentioned, you've got your Ivy Leagues, you've got your Harvard, and your Yale, Princeton, places like that do legitimately only have a certain number of spots. And you've got a really big threshold to get over to get into one of those. But, like the University of Wisconsin at Parkside, can you hold a pen and fog a mirror? Congratulations, you're a college student. I have met a lot of Parkside students, especially having lived in Kenosha for 10 years, where I've actually had to have the conversation of, man, you might need a refund. They might have failed you. Among the dozens of instructions with admissions policies that take race into account are Yale University, Brown, that's ironic, Columbia, and the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Chicago, and Dartmouth. Roberts left open the possibility of colleges considering the discussion of race in an individual student's application, citing the example of someone who personally encountered racial discrimination. The student must be treated on the based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race, he added, and yet that's going to be a big part of it. I was mistaken yesterday when I talked about Shapiro, who had talked about blind admission studies. That was not Shapiro, that was Styx Hexenhammer, who was talking about the best way to get kids into college on a merit-based system is to go with a completely blind admission. I'm sorry, blind application, not admission. You start off, no names, no genders, and no address. Especially if you are taking up local students. If you see a person's address, 9 times out of 10 you can pretty much pick out, especially in the big red line cities that these colleges are typically in, you see that person's address, you typically, you know what color that person's skin is. With very, very, very little exception. But you go in, no name, no address. You got your classes, your GPA, anything that would have had like a racial studies in high school, which I don't know that there's a lot of those that are elective. I come from a small town where we didn't have a lot of electives like that, but a racial studies, that's elective for anything at all. That gets left out. Your extracurriculars, like obviously if you're in the Black Student Union, that gets left out. But all your other extracurriculars go back on to the application, and then you just go by the statistics that's on there. Part of the problem with this as well is a lot of applications involve an essay of sorts. Especially when you get up into the higher Ivy Leagues, and a lot of that leaves open the door for people to talk about their own racial experiences and, you know, take the blind away from that. It's definitely not a perfect way to go back about and do things, and it would definitely, the way that I've seen it described would take some tweaking for sure, but as far as where we are at with that, that is probably one of the best. Let's read one from CNN. What the Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action does and does not do, from Piper Hudspeth Blackburn. The Supreme Court's landmark decision on Thursday to gut affirmative action has made it unlawful for colleges to take race into consideration as a specific factor in admissions. The ruling means that admissions programs like those at 2 universities at the center of the case, Harvard and the University of North Carolina, are no longer permitted. Here are some other key effects of the ruling. Majorities say race can still be a part of admissions applications, minority unconvinced. While the decision will impact admissions policies that have historically benefited Black and Latino students, the ruling still allows colleges and universities to consider an applicant's discussion of how race has affected their life, as long as it is concretely tied to the quality of character or unique ability that the applicant can bring to the school. The problem with that, and I am not 100% against that, because I know some people who have come from rough neighborhoods who are actually somewhat intelligent. And in a couple of cases of people that I've actually met and know are really, really intelligent. But the influence of being in the neighborhood that they're in has detracted their academic ability by far. that is an actual situation where on an application you can take race into account for why it's so important for you to be able to get into a college that normally would be unattainable. Unfortunately, I don't see a world in which it gets used that way. It's a great idea in theory. In practice, not so much. John Roberts, in the majority opinion, noted that applicants could share in essays. Also, how their heritage or culture motivated them to take on a leadership role, for instance. In other words, the students must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race, the opinion stated. Dissenting Democratic appointed justices objected, insisting that the ruling would make it practically impossible for colleges and universities to take race into account in admissions. That's kind of the point. Sonia Sotomayor wrote that the court was merely imposing its preferred college application format on the country by taking the role of college administrators to decide what is better for the society. No, it's deciding what's better for your hegemony. Because the court cannot escape the inevitable truth that race matters in students' lives, it announces a false promise. To save face and appear attuned to reality, she wrote, "No one is fooled." While the ruling is not changed, while colleges and universities will no longer be able to consider race as the sole factor, Sotomayor noted in her dissent that the ruling still allows colleges and universities to consider other factors to increase diversity on campus. And again, that's going to be diversity of skin color, not diversity of thought. Colleges can consider students who speak multiple languages or could be the first in their family to attend college, Sotomayor wrote. That was me, by the way. The Biden admin also announced several plans on Thursday to help colleges continue their efforts to recruit diverse student bodies. In light of the decision, those steps include releasing a report on strategies for increasing diversity and educational opportunity and providing schools with guidance on what is and what isn't allowed, among other things. The Biden admin is going to provide a roadmap to get around the decision. The impact will vary state by state, school by school, which honestly it should. If you're state funded, that's going to be a completely different story. And if you're government funded, especially on the federal government, it's going to be a completely different story. But yes, it absolutely should vary state by state and school by school. Because your local demographic knows what's needed to fulfill a role in your community. Not all higher education institutions will be affected by the ruling. The decision allows U.S. military service academies to continue to take race into consideration as a factor in admissions, because that's privately operated by the executive branch in the Department of Defense. I guess that's publicly operated. Steve Vladeck, CNN Supreme Court analyst and professor at the University of Texas School of Law, said that the impact could also vary depending on where the schools are located. In states that continue to permit colleges and universities to take race into account, we'll surely see efforts to encourage the kinds of uses the majority does not expressly disavow, whether in diversity statements or elsewhere, he said. Well, and that's another thing too, because we keep hearing about, and that's been one of the big factors that's been talked about in the Biden admin this time through, is the HBCU, the historically black colleges and universities, which, if I understand the mission statement correctly on that, and do correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, that you're not permitted to go to these schools if you're white, or at least if you're not permitted, you're very, very highly discouraged. I might be wrong on that. But that, I mean, does affirmative action do something for that? And typically, if I remember correctly, these schools are typically in redlined or demographically black areas. Although I believe that they're mostly also private, so their admission standards will vary greatly compared to other places. NPR having to weigh in. We'll look at this one very briefly. The Supreme Court cuts affirmative action, effectively ending race-conscious admissions. This is from Nina Totenberg. And remember, NPR is only 10% government funded. And the ad revenue is not enough there. Remember, they had to lay off so many people. So they depend on you. Hit that donate button because NPR cannot tell you how evil the Trump appointees cutting affirmative action can be unless you hit that donate button and give you all of your money. I mean our money, comrade. That is right, NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. The U.S. Supreme Court found that Harvard and the University of North Carolina's admissions policy violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The decision reverses decades of precedent upheld over the years by narrow court majorities that included Republican-appointed justices. It could end the ability of colleges and universities, public and private, to do what most say that they still need to do: consider race as one of the many factors in deciding which of the qualified applicants is to be admitted. John Roberts, longtime critic of racial preferences of any kind, wrote the court's majority decision, saying the nation's colleges and universities must use colorblind criteria in admissions. Hear, hear. The court has permitted race-based college admissions only within the confines of narrow restrictions. Such admissions programs must comply with strict scrutiny, may never use race as a stereotype or negative. They're liberal, good luck with that. Just like I said when we were talking about Roseanne Barr the other day. The first time that I ever heard the joke about 44 Jews in a Volkswagen, which for obvious reasons on YouTube I am not going to say out loud, for very obvious reasons, the first time I ever heard that joke was from not only a progressive Democrat, but a progressive Democrat who actively door knocked for Kerry, and for Obama, and for Biden. And for Hillary. And must at some point end, the court wrote in its majority opinion. Respondents' admissions system's failure of these criteria must therefore be invalidated under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Hear, hear. The ruling in the UNC case was 6-3 along ideological lines. In the Harvard case, it was 6-2 with Justice Ketanji Brown recusing. The majority added, at the time, nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected the applicant's life, so long as that discussion is concretely tied to a quality of character or unique ability. Again, great idea in theory, impossible to use/enforce in practice. In furious dissents, the court's liberals pilloried the majority's reasoning and its view of racial reality in the U.S. The court subverts the constitutional guarantee of equal protection by further entrenching racial inequality in education, the very foundation of our democratic government and pluralistic society, Sonia Sotomayor wrote. Ketanji Brown Jackson added, with let them eat cake obliviousness, okay, coming from you. Today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all. Isn't that the goal, though? I keep hearing progressives tell me how much they love Star Trek, because Star Trek is a truly colorblind society, or so they say. It really isn't. No matter, again, how much the progressives try to tell you that it is, it's not. So you should be thrilled by this. By a legal fiat, by deeming race irrelevant in law, does not make it so in life. And having so detached itself from this country's actual past and present experiences, the court has now been lured into interfering with the crucial work that UNC and other institutions of higher learning are doing to solve America's real-world problems. So, That's what NPR has to say about this one. From Fox News, GOP presidential candidates applaud Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling on toxic college admissions. From Paul Steinhauser, Andy Murray over at Fox News. Republican presidential candidates are applauding the ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court's conservative majority to severely limit the use of race in determining college admissions. In a 6-3 decision announced on Thursday, the justices ruled that the use of race as a factor in college admissions was a violation of the 14th Amendment. Blah, 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 blah. We know all that. I should know, with Fox News, we can probably, especially if it's this late in the stack, we can skip the first 3 paragraphs. Nikki Haley weighing in on this. Nimrata Haley, Lady Bush. The world admires America because we value freedom and opportunity. The Supreme Court reaffirmed those values today, picking winners and losers. Based on race is fundamentally wrong, and yet picking winners and losers is what the government's been doing for 70 years. The decision will help every student, no matter their background, have a better opportunity to achieve. Because this is archived, I don't think I can just jump straight to the tweet. Oh, I was wrong. The decision will help every student, no matter the background, have a better opportunity to achieve the American dream. Haley, a former 2-term South Carolina governor who later served as U.S. ambassador to the UN, said, well, we read the tweet already. Haley, the daughter of immigrants from India, grew up and became South Carolina's first female governor. Tim, Scott of South Carolina, in an interview on the Fox News channel, also applauded the ruling, saying, "This is a good day for America. This is the day where we understand that being judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin, is what the Constitution wants." He said, vying to be the first black presidential candidate of the GOP. The senator also added, "I'm not sure that going to an elite university is the path to prosperity." It is a path to prosperity. I don't know if it's the path to prosperity. It's actually going as high as your character, your grit, and your talent will take you, said Scott, the only black Republican in the Senate. Multi-millionaire entrepreneur and non-serious presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, whose parents also immigrated to the U.S. from India, argued in a statement that meritocracy and equity are fundamentally incompatible. Let's call affirmative action what it really is, institutional racism. He later followed up with that by saying, "Please buy my upcoming book," after the campaign. Ramaswamy made a prediction about the ruling, stating, "Mark my words, the Supreme Court's ruling is a step in the right direction, but it will spawn the beginning of a new era of shadow racial balancing." Works great in theory, but not in practice. Where universities and companies play complex games that deprioritize numerical academic metrics to still achieve the same goals. Ex-spy and former Texas Rep Will Hurd. Oh, have you heard? Who launched his presidential campaign last week. Wow, usually I actually stay up on that. I missed that entirely. Told Fox News, with or without the affirmative action, we are failing to prepare too many of our black and brown students for higher education. That's the problem. Where they should be right instead on the front lines, going to war. For holy world policing. We have income inequality because we have education inequality. Our elementary, middle, and high schools need the support from state governments and their federal government. Boo! Otherwise, this is going to continue to plague our kids for generations to come, added Hurd, who they say is black. The jury's still out on that. Larry Elder, who's actually black, Elder, who is black, added, "As for blacks and Hispanics having difficulty getting into the more competitive colleges, we should address the abysmal quality of urban K-12 schools. The left that bemoans the Supreme Court decision opposes school choice despite the fact that it offers parents options to improve test scores and graduation rates for the Black and Hispanic students that Democrats purport to care so much about. Not only that, but it raises the bar, or at least if they want the funding, they have to raise the bar on the schools that the leftovers stay in. Hey, if you want that federal funding, you gotta give us better test scores and work harder to keep more kids in your school. On the other side, we've got quite a large amount of wailing and gnashing of teeth coming to our friends from the left. A dagger in our back, leftists freak out after SCOTUS overturns affirmative action in college admissions. Some of the opinions that we're about to read are paid, by the way. So I don't know if they actually have those opinions, but they are paid to spread them no matter what. From Leaf LeMahieu. Left-wing politicians and pundits expressed rage on Thursday after a landmark Supreme Court decision was released that struck down the race-based admissions policies of Harvard and the University of North Carolina. And despite all their rage, they're still just rats in a cage. In a 6-3 decision, we know this. Let's get into the people freaking out. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the ruling diminished hard-fought progress for racial justice. Has anybody seen my wine? Chief Justice Roberts, majority opinion, does violence to it does violence, you guys. His opinion does violence. Words are violence. To justice and fairness in America, she wrote on Twitter. In contrast, Justice Jackson's powerful dissent is inspiring us because she knows all about affirmative action as we continue to fight to widen the path to success for all Americans. Chuck U. Schumer said the decision was misguided. Hold on, I gotta put my Manhattan pretending to be Bronx accent on. Well, look here, the Supreme Court ruling has put a giant roadblock in our country's march for racial justice, Schumer said. The consequences of the decisions will be felt immediately and across the country as students of color will face an admission cycle next year with fewer opportunities to attend the same colleges and universities that the parents and older siblings did. Former President Barack Obama, forgetting the fact that he was literally the president, said the court's ruling would hamper minorities' educational opportunities. Affirmative action was it was never complete. Answer in the drive towards more just society. But for generations of students who have been systemically excluded from most America's key institutions, it gave us a chance to show that we more than deserve a seat at the table in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent decision. It's time to redouble our effort, Obama said. And remember, if anything bad happens here, it's all Bush's fault. Nobody else. Barack, we're blaming Trump now. I'm sorry. It's all that evil Trump's fault. ABC News commentator and former acting Democratic National Committee Chair Donna Brazile said the justices that supported the decision whitewashed the Constitution. Let's listen.
Well, it's a very sad day, and I agree with the student who said that I shouldn't be surprised, but I am shocked by the fact that in the majority opinion, they basically whitewash the Constitution in a way that basically says that we were right all along. The 14th Amendment, the clause, Equal Protection Clause, will guarantee us a colorblind society. We all know that when slavery ended, Jim Crow began to take root, not only in my native South, but across this country. It took the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to eliminate those vestiges of racism. And now the most effective tool, an affirmative tool to eliminate barriers, a tool that would give us opportunity, is now weakened. So yes, the students will have to write perhaps essays that describe how.
Which is interesting because quite the opposite, you yourself, Mrs. Brazil, are a tool that eliminates opportunity.
This has been a long struggle to get to the place where they can even have a door to look at versus a door that would be left ajar for all people to get through. I see this as a setback. I see this as a setback not just for minorities. Of course, it's a setback for minorities. It's also a setback for white women as well and others who have used these effective tools to remedy past discrimination based on gender. So this is another, what I call another hit from the Roberts Court, whether it's on affirmative action, whether it's on voting rights, whether it's on the women's right to choose. This is about freedom. And I think for those of us who believe in freedom and justice and equality for all people, we have more work to do. But you know what? Dr. King said the arc of the universe is long, it bends toward justice. I'm going to keep believing that. And I'm going to encourage those young people that you just heard to tell their stories. Be part of the narrative. Let people know our great American story, because we were making a lot of progress. And I still believe that we can make progress after this disastrous opinion.
The lack of progress that we've actually had in this country aside, missed some comments over. I saw from the Mogwai over here. Mogwai says, I would love a presidential frontrunner that doesn't have an over-under on if he will stay breathing. Harris bet the under. It's funny, Nancy's husband and Lindsey Graham, have the same timeshare closet, I heard, and one of the better song lyrics in history. Mogwai says, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Who do you think was one of the first one? How many people today got killed because they happened to be standing between Al Sharpton and a camera today when this decision came down? The news isn't going to report on that, but how many people do you think got killed because they were standing between Al Sharpton and a mainstream media microphone and camera? He didn't read this on the news. He didn't see this on the internet. He didn't see it on the TV. The case was handed down, the gavel hit, and his ears perked up. And he felt magnetically drawn to the closest CNN camera. And he ran there on foot. 50 miles. To make sure to tell you that America was racist. Let's listen to Al Sharpton.
Well, I think that this is tantamount to sticking a dagger in our back, because what they have said now is that it is unconstitutional to even consider race. And given the racial history of the country, let's not act like blacks are behind because there's something in our genes that made us behind.
Why is he doing this from a limo?
It was against the law for us to even read and write until 160 years ago. We were enslaved 246 years. So it is to completely throw to the wind the history of why we needed affirmative action in the first place. Secondly, let's remember that affirmative action was a conservative remedy that came out of the Nixon administration, written by Art Fletcher. So
that doesn't make it right. This is like the exact same thing that they keep saying. Oh, well, you should be encouraging Biden to go back and raise the debt limit because Trump raised it 3 times. That doesn't make it right, you moron. But this is a conservative thing. That Nixon was the one that did this back in the 70s, man. That doesn't make it right. You keep saying, insert conservative name here did this. That doesn't make it right. But Al Sharpton. I always get those two confused. Al Sharpton, not Jesse Jackson, is not ready for that conversation. I bet Jesse Jackson is not ready for that conversation either.
So now you have a right-wing Trump court, because let's not forget Trump nominated a third of the
lifelong Democrat right-wing Trump.
Sitting court, 9 members, 3 of which Trump put on there, that is saying, well, we'll protect your voting rights on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, and then we're going to pull the rug from under you in terms of you being able to have an even consideration. We're not even talking about a mandatory, a consideration of race to higher education. My last point that really is frightening to me is now in the private sector, corporations, many of whom made pledges around the George Floyd movement that didn't live up to them, can now say, well, we can't consider race in terms of contracts and employment and board members and what we do in the community, because the court now is saying it's unconstitutional. This is a tremendous setback that must be resisted by every corner, including the Department of Justice and including states, because what they have said is that it is unconstitutional to even consider race. And I think it is unimaginable.
I hate that they cut that off there, but I mean, you also don't want to listen to that moron talk for any longer than you have to. Princeton professor Eddie Glaude predicted a kind of segregated higher education landscape would emerge, which, by the way, our friends on the left are already trying to do.
We don't have the answers just yet. We're going to read in real quick. Let Julia do what she needs to do. Our Laura Jarrett's reading the opinion as well as we await the outcome in this decision. What's going through your mind right now, Catherine?
That's a big one. And it was funny. Before we started, I asked Charles what law school he went to. He went to Howard. I had a different experience. It was me, Sonia, and Bob, 3 black students in my graduating class in law school in 1988. Love my law school, but that's not a good thing. And they've now increased the black student population. And if this decision comes out a way that it shouldn't, depending on your political beliefs, then you were going to go back to a 3-person black person class in a class of 200. And that's just not a good thing.
Eddie Glaude claims the country will return to segregated colleges and universities. Sounding like a racist, he openly decries more Asian students getting admitted to institutions of higher education.
Eddie Glaude, you're with us. Your thoughts, if indeed affirmative action is now banned nationwide from the college admission process, what is the impact?
Well, to be honest with you, we will return to elite institutions, more specifically being the space for a particular population, for predominantly white and Asian students. We will begin to see a kind of segregated higher education landscape. And the irony, of course, as I've anticipated this decision, but to hear it, I'm kind of still, I'm trying to manage my emotions. But, this was just one remedy, affirmative action, the only remedy to the legacy of discrimination in admissions in American higher education. Only one remedy. And so here they've taken it away. And so where we find ourselves is we're going to go back to those classes where you had 1, 2, 3. We already had a small percentage of black and brown students in elite institutions. That percentage will get even smaller.
And like I said earlier, they definitely want the diversity of skin color. But if you dare to have a diversity of thought, especially if you express any sort of conservative thought while having the wrong color skin, you will be shunned as evil and off the plantation. Some other reactions to this from Fox 5 out of D.C. Suspicious package left on steps of Supreme Court. Suspect arrested. From Fox 5 Digital DC team. A suspicious package left on the steps of the Supreme Court shut down nearby streets on Thursday as officials investigated whether there was an imminent threat. Protesters who had gathered in the area in response to the justice's affirmative action ruling were asked to clear the sidewalk for safety purposes. After nearly 3 hours of looking into the matter, the Supreme Court police made the arrest. Around 12:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Capitol Police sent out an alert stating that they were responding to a suspicious package in the unit block of 1st Street Southeast. They notified staff and others working near the buildings to avoid the area until further notice. Maryland Avenue, between Constitution Avenue and 1st Street Northeast, was closed off, as well as 1st Street between Constitution Ave and Northeast and Independence Avenue Southeast, among other adjacent roads. If Steven is watching this, by the way, and I think that we're Chromecast in the Zed house, he's probably sitting there saying, "Yeah, I know where all that is. I've been there." I had kind of hoped, and I'm not really interested that much in going and touring DC because I hear it's a hellhole. But just on the off chance that I had been down there, I had kind of hoped to actually go down and see all the monuments, but, you know, the riots were going on at the time. And besides, it was sunnier and nicer and, well, a little bit more humid in bright sunny Orlando that day. And it was pretty sunny, though, that day when we left, though, too, I guess. At 3 p.m., Capitol Police gave the all clear, and the streets have since reopened. So, no real details on what it was, but it was a suspicious package on the day that the Supreme Court handed down an opinion that the mostly peaceful left didn't like. The quiet part out loud. I don't know if this is a parody account or not. There are rumors that this is Call Me K doing a left-wing parody account. I have not had them confirmed, but she's also not denied them. But this account, this Erica Marsh account, does say some pretty outrageous things, and this one might take the cake rather. Oh, and by the way, has not been deleted yet. This has been handed around by people left and right as screenshots because they all think that she's going to take it down. Let's see. Mogwai says, Al is so mad he wasn't even rhyming. Where will we get the next Johnny Cochran without affirmative action? Oh, they'll find a way. Because remember, this is only for schools. And Mogwai says, you played Fallout 3, that's good enough. Plus it makes the DC look better than it really is. That's fair. With Erica Marsh. Today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on black people. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system. You might want to delete that. Which is exactly why affirmative action-based programs were needed. Today's decision is a travesty. With Tim Young, who runs his mouth, by the way, says, oh look, a white female Democrat who worked for Biden thinks that black people are so stupid that they can't get into college on their own merit. Well, that's been a recurring theme. And again, I remind you that some of the most viciously racist jokes that I've ever heard, I've heard from progressive Democrats. I used to be one. Until I reached the age of reason. Yeah, that's a thing that actually happened. Whoopi Goldberg blows up over affirmative action, ruling, why do you fear us? And we will now, because 2 on Rumble, 4 on the main channels, give The View their only 4 views for the day from Virginia Kruta. Whoopi Goldberg joined the majority of her co-hosts on ABC's The View in arguing that race-based college admissions policies were acceptable as long as they benefited the correct races. Let's watch.
The Supreme Court has upset a...
Don't worry, we're not going to do the whole 9 minutes.
45-year precedent ruling it unconstitutional for universities to consider race in admissions. Now, the 14th Amendment is supposed to promise equal protection. But if everyone was actually treated equally, we wouldn't have had to put in affirmative action. We wouldn't have had to do it. Right. People wouldn't have had to march and begged and gotten hosed and all of these things that people did to just balance us out with everything else going on in the country. So what is your, and I want to let you know the two people who have been bringing this for many years, who've been trying to get this gone, Edward Bloom and Abigail Fisher.
Yes.
You two have been trying to get rid of affirmative action. Why do we scare you?
Who are they? I don't know. Well,
Why do we scare you?
Abigail Fisher claimed at the University of Texas at Austin, I believe, that her place in the class was taken by a black person, but we learned later that she just didn't have the grades.
Yeah. And the black person did.
And the black person did, and the legacies did, and the athletes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other
took
thing.
those places.
If they're going to get rid of why don't they get rid of this legacy stuff?
Amherst just did this. So colleges are now shifting how they're going to account for this because people are not, it is not lost on the population that there are problems with the way people are treated in this country. So Amherst has shifted to getting rid of legacy. You're also seeing, I think, and Sonny, correct me if I'm wrong, I was reading on something in Texas where they kind of, without race conscious or whatever the term is, they took the top 10% of every school in Texas and allowed them automatic acceptance into the state schools. And what that did is, we already know communities are segregated. So you're accounting for every school, which means you then have a high percentage of black and brown communities who are automatically getting accepted. So there were ways around it that we're seeing people get creative with to make sure they're accounting for that.
I kind of resent the legacy thing because, you know, I was the first one in my family to go to college, and then I had cousins.
And your college failed you, by the way. So, it is astounding to me that people actually watch this. All right. What else do we have here? The political palm. Breaking. Anyone shocked? Harvard says it will use college application essays to continue its racial discrimination in response to Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. We will read briefly from the Gateway Pundit. I apologize for the eye aids for this one. Harvard says, this is from Christina Layla. Harvard on Tuesday responded to the Supreme Court's historic ruling on its race-based admissions process. The Supreme Court crushed the racist affirmative action policy at Harvard and the University of North Carolina on Thursday. Harvard says it will comply with the Supreme Court ruling. However, they admitted they will still use an applicant's essay on discussing how race affected his or her life during the admissions process. Today, the Supreme Court delivered its decision on student fair admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. The court held that Harvard's admissions system does not comply with the principles of an Equal Protection Clause embodied in Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Harvard College said in a statement. Harvard responds by explaining how it will comply with today's SCOTUS ruling by exploiting a specific weak spot in Roberts' majority decision. Again, not enforceable. And how do you go back around and start doing fines unless there are massive lawsuits that come out to actually hold them to account for any of this? A little bit more detail coming from the Daily Caller, which I also don't typically use because, again, not green check verified. Here's how universities plan to skirt the Supreme Court's likely ban on race-based admissions. From Caitlin Richardson. Universities are searching for ways to maintain racial quotas ahead of a likely Supreme Court decision blocking affirmative action. With the Supreme Court soon to issue a ruling in a pair of cases questioning the constitutionality of affirmative action, which multiple justices appeared ready to rule against. During oral arguments, universities are developing plans to maintain the current racial composition of their student bodies without explicitly using racial preference in the admissions process. Schools have floated ideas such as making testing optional, because of course they did, because these schools think the same way that Erica Marsh does, giving greater weight to students' socioeconomic backgrounds and recruiting based on geographic area. Which is why, again, when I brought up the blind applications, I said you've got to leave the address out of it. While Supreme Court strike down of affirmative action would be an important step in restoring the principles of colorblindness and merit to higher education, I don't think it will be the end of race-conscious admissions. Renu Mukherjee Paulson, policy analyst at the Manhattan Institute, told the Daily Caller. Well, no, we know it's not going to be. There will be a way, again, to get their diversity of skin color, but not their diversity of thought. A little bit of fear porn over what's going to happen next from the USA Today. Supreme Court just reversed affirmative action. Here's what's next. From Jessica Ginn. For years, Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, has crusaded for stakeholder capitalism. The idea that business leaders should value the well-being of people on the planet along with interests of shareholders. These woke beliefs Salesforce offered to relocate employees concerned about being able to get an abortion in Texas, stop selling software to retailers that stock military-style rifles, and Benioff spoke out against Georgia and North Carolina for passing laws that would allow LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYAEIOU sometimes wide discrimination. Have gotten this activist CEO in hot water with conservatives who say that he's sacrificing profits for politics. Don't get mad at him, just stop buying his crap. I don't know what Salesforce does, but they're big enough that they're on the Dow. And if you all came together and stopped buying whatever service that they're doing and did some research on what they're invested in, you would make him back off really quick without a single brick being thrown or insult thrown on Twitter. But Benioff hasn't backed off. Last fall, Salesforce sided with Harvard and the University of North Carolina in a pair of cases before the Supreme Court challenging the practice of considering race in admissions to build diversity on college campuses. Of skin color, not thought. In a 6-3 decision written by Roberts, the High Court on Thursday struck down affirmative action college admissions. Legal experts say the move to restrict affirmative action could also lead to more challenges on how corporations make hiring and promotion decisions. Well, it'd be easier to start promoting people on race, wow, that was almost a Freudian slip. It would make it easier to start promoting people on merit, not race. What's more, the affirmative action reversal could emerge as the latest flashpoint in the nation's culture war. Observers expect the ruling to embolden attacks on corporate diversity, equity, and inclusive initiatives as tensions rise over how corporate America should address lingering workplace inequality. Well, that's been going out the window for a while. When corporations have to start cutting costs, that's typically the first place that they go is their DEI staff. At least in the last year. I will admit, in years before, that was probably one of the last places that they laid off from. In response, companies are holding discussions and contemplating changes to diversity programs. Some are second-guessing setting public targets for racial diversity in their executive ranks or running leadership training programs exclusively for underrepresented groups. Others are wondering if they should remove diversity from job titles to avoid scrutiny. You mean like world's worst press secretary token diversity hire? But many employers, including Salesforce, say they plan to stay the course. Well, there are a lot of people that plan to stop buying from you. The company says one of its core values is equality, and it has built diversity initiatives from recruiting individuals from underrepresented backgrounds to create an employee advocacy program for people of color that could take into account that talent is spread evenly, but opportunity is not. Well, opportunity really is. If talent is spread equally, opportunity is. We don't waver. Salesforce Chief Equality Officer Lori Castillo-Martinez told USA Today, equality is our value, and that's something we will continue to focus on, especially in these challenging times. Well, good luck. You might need it. From the Daily Wire, conservative leaders reveal next steps in affirmative action fight. We'll go over this one briefly, just to see how much the fear porn aligns with what the USA Today just told us. From Leaf LeMahieu, conservative politicians and commentators on Thursday laid out the next steps in the battle over affirmative action policies at the after the Supreme Court struck down the race-based admissions. Jim Banks said the fight needed to move beyond education and into the military, corporations, and the federal government. Yeah, but if you take it out of the military, you lose like 3/4 of your front line. Affirmative action was a failed experiment rooted in racial discrimination from day one. But the hard work doesn't stop here. This morning's ruling is just the beginning of eliminating race as a determining factor for success in our military, federal government, and boardrooms across the country, and the anti-woke caucus will be at the front of that fight to restore colorblind meritocracy, Banks said in a statement. No, hold on, Jim Banks. I think this will actually be a good experiment in how diversity hiring, especially in the federal government, works versus meritocracy. So let the DEI people, let the Democrat people, the progressive people, let them do affirmative action in their hiring. And then let the meritocratic people, the populists, the GOP sometimes when it's convenient for them, let them do things on the meritocratic basis and see whose administration runs smoother. It'd be kind of an interesting way to determine whose ideas and whose way of doing things actually holds up. The 6-3 ruling from the court exempted military institutions because of course it did, saying that there could be distinct issues at play in military academies. No military academy is party to these cases, however, and none of the courts below address the propriety of race-based admission systems. In that context, this opinion does not address the issue in light of the potentially distinct interests that the military academies may present, Roberts wrote. Other commentators pointed out that fewer than a dozen states have laws banning affirmative action, which is fair. It's important to note that SCOTUS decision is very narrow. Ryan Godersky wrote on Twitter, only 9 states ban affirmative action. If you're a state legislator, you should be putting forward a bill to ban it in your state. States with various affirmative action bans include Arizona, Florida, Idaho, Michigan, Nebraska, New Hampshire, and Oklahoma. Some of the states ban affirmative action policies at the state level, while others have already banned it at educational institutions. So it looks like they're going to go into the workplace next. Not sure how that's actually going to turn out, but grab some popcorn because we'll be watching it as it goes. From Fox News, a little bit of fight in the Supreme Court. Thomas blasts Jackson's race-infused worldview in Supreme Court ruling outlawing affirmative action. From Brianna Herlihy, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas dismantled his colleague Ketanji Brown Jackson's race-infused worldview as part of the Supreme Court's decision on Thursday to outlaw race considerations, also known as affirmative action. Thomas, the second black justice to sit on the bench, sided with the 6-3 majority, ruling Thursday, saying the court's decision sees the university's admissions for what they are, rudderless race-based preferences designed to ensure particular racial mix in their entering classes. Mr. Scott is here, by the way. Welcome. Thomas said that Justice Jackson's race-infused worldview falls flat at each step. Individuals are the sum of their unique experiences, challenges, and accomplishments. What matters is not the barriers that they face, but how they choose to confront them. And their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives, he said. based. Thomas wrote a concurring opinion to offer an originalist defense of the colorblind Constitution and to clarify that all forms of discrimination based on race, including so-called affirmative action, are prohibited under the Constitution, and emphasized the pernicious effects of all such discrimination. In doing so, Thomas slammed Jackson's dissent, which she called the ruling truly a tragedy for all of us with ostrich-like logic. Though Jackson seems to think that her race-based theory can somehow benefit everybody, it's an immutable fact that every time the government uses racial criteria to bring the races together, somebody gets excluded, and the person excluded suffers an injury solely because of his or her race, Thomas wrote. Jackson seems to have no response, no explanation at all for the people who will shoulder that burden. How, for example, would Jackson explain this need for race-based preferences to the Chinese student who has worked hard his whole life only to be denied college admission in part because of his skin color? Thomas questioned. Nice. Briefly, from Roberts, from the Daily Wire, Chief Justice Roberts accuses liberal justices of power grab and affirmative action opinion. I was a little curious about where he was going with this, and I have not pre-read this, because again, of me passing out like a moron on the couch while I was supposed to be prepping for the show. John Roberts delivered a scathing response to the liberal justices in Thursday's affirmative action decision, accusing them of bearing a power grab in the dissents penned by Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Roberts addressed the dissent on page 46 of his opinion, saying that the justices had divorced the case from the context in a concerted effort to make the court the arbiter of which races were entitled to preferential treatment. The principal dissent wrenches our new case law from context, going to lengths to ignore the parts of the law that it does not like. The serious reservations that Bakke, Grutter, and Fisher had about racial preferences go unrecognized, Roberts began. The unambiguous requirements of the Equal Protection Clause, the most rigid, searching scrutiny it entails, go without note. And the repeated demands that race-based admissions programs must end go overlooked. Contorted worse still into a demand that such programs never stop, Roberts continued. Most troubling of all is what the dissent must make these omissions to defend a judiciary that picks winners and losers based on the color of their skin. Just want to skip down to the end of this one. Separate but equal is inherently unequal, said Brown. Section 347 U.S. Code at 495 emphasis added, it says it is the dissent. It depends, rather, says the dissent. So, good on him. The people, and what gets me is that the current crop of progressives have spent years decrying separate but equal. And now they seem to be going for it because they want a separate way of admission to favor those who they say are underprivileged, or, like Erica Marsh says, are too stupid to make it in their own rights. And the last one, just because we got to have a little bit of fun with this before we head out of here. From the Bee. Awkward! Supreme Court rules against affirmative action, with affirmative action hire sitting right there. Awkward! Alright, we gotta move on to some other stuff here before we head out of here for the day. And at the 1:45 mark, which again we're gonna move past, or move later because I got started late, we will go into things that I like and things that I hate. Let's talk about the Biden speech from yesterday. From the Associated Press, President Biden touts Bidenomics, though new poll shows just 34% approve of his handling of the economy. And this is from the Associated Press, which again tells me that Mr. Biden is going under the bus. Can you see those tire tracks on him? From Josh Boak, Emily Swanson, and Chris Magarian. President Biden made his pitch on Wednesday to a skeptical public that the U.S. economy is thriving under what he now touts as Bidenomics, even as a new poll showed that it could be a hard sell as the foundation for his 2024 re-election campaign. It's not even the foundation of his campaign now, so I don't know why he would move to that. In a major economic speech in Chicago, of all places, Biden said his admin's efforts were sparking recovery after Republican policies had crushed America's middle class. Yes, Chicago, where businesses are fleeing because of taxes or the fact that the workers keep getting murdered on their way to work, is the place to go back and tout your economic plan. That 34% figure is even lower than his overall approval rating of 41%, according to the survey from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. Biden's approval figures have barely moved for the past year and a half, a source of concern for the president pursuing a second term. No, it's not a source of concern for him. It is a source of concern for his handlers. Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on from day to day. No matter what happens, he's going to wake up on January the 21st and look around and says, "Hey, Jill, where am I? Why are we back in Delaware? Aren't I supposed to be in the West Wing, man?" Let's see. He wants voters to connect local roads and bridge products, mostly that are locally funded, factory construction, and the rise of EVs and renewable energy to the millions of dollars in initiatives that he signed into law to make sure that his big business buddies got rich. He signed into law during the first 2 years of his admin. "Hey, man, Bidenomics is the future, man," he said, specifically plagiarizing from Reagan, by the way. He declared in his Wednesday speech to cheering supporters, "Bidenomics is just another way of saying, restore the American dream." Dude, you lifted that right from a Reagan speech. Holy crap. At the same time, he sought to paint previous Republican tax cuts as deeply flawed because that's pretty much the only thing that he has, saying that they helped the rich but failed the middle class for decades, as the promised trickle-down benefits never seemed to come to the less wealthy, except for the massive tax cut that they all got. "Hey, man, that trickle-down approach failed the middle class, man. It failed America, man. It blew up the deficit and increased inequity, increased our infrastructure, stripped the dignity and pride." Is it Pride Month still? And hope communities, one after another, man. As he was departing Washington on Wednesday, Biden said he believes the U.S. will avoid the recession that many economic analysts have been expecting, even though it's already here. Republican leaders such as McCarthy said last year that the high inflation under Biden's watch meant that we are in a recession, but that's not the case under economic definitions. If you've got a situation where finished goods are going down in price rapidly, you're already in a recession, whether your economists want to believe it or not. Got one from the other side. Bidenomics ripped apart by bodega owner, veteran, and college student. Should be ashamed, from Elizabeth Heckman. Heck. President Biden attempted to convince voters of his economic plans by rolling out Bidenomics on the campaign trail on Wednesday. A voter panel joined Fox and Friends first, expressing their concerns about the economy under Biden. Air Force veteran Lydia Dominguez says she's not buying it and that Biden should be ashamed of the economic climate. It's creating an atmosphere of desperation and hardship, and it's absolutely atrocious. Dominguez said the economy has affected families like hers that are taking on increased debt to cover bills and trying to find ways to save money. I find a lot of family members and friends are now having 2, maybe 3 additional jobs. It's creating a lot of depression, said Dominguez. University of Chicago student Perry Zhao said rising prices of gas, food, and electricity are making it hard for him to live off campus. I went to the gas station yesterday and my bill cost me nearly my entire day's worth of work. And I think that's just ridiculous. And additionally, the cost of gas and food otherwise in the city, as well as my electricity living off campus at the U, Chicago has been taking a larger chunk of my limited budget than before. Brooklyn bodega owner Carmelia Bello said she doesn't believe small businesses are being supported by the president. That's because they're not. I'm actually creating a GoFundMe because I'm about to lose my business at any time. Actually, my door was closed for 3 weeks. I could not afford the light bill. I could not afford purchases for my bodega. So I don't even know how he can think about saying helping small businesses. He never did. No, he did a lot of help for the big business, though. And that's people that are out on the ground. Look, I'm telling you, my wage went up $12,000 this year over last year. Or at least if I keep up on the pace that I've been keeping up on. My wage will be up $12,000 and I am in the exact same place that I was financially before that. Because it's still rising. That 4% that they keep trying to tout is still on top of 9%. And they keep running around like that's a victory, so. But we've got the actual truth of it here. CNN, in a rare moment of clarity, Bidenomics is all about repelling Trump's chaos theory. Op-ed from Stephen Collinson. I'm not going to go too far into this, but I will remind you what it is that we're actually seeing from this. Stephen Collinson, Biden often explains his simple theory of winning elections with his dad's fabled kitchen table wisdom. Don't compare me to the almighty, man. Compare me to the alternative. But his big speech in Chicago on Wednesday dedicated to enshrining Bidenomics as a credible idea in the public mind, and again plagiarizing Reagan, implicitly recognized that comparisons to the alternative in November 2024, quite possibly Trump, may not be enough to win election. In 20, Biden won the White House by promising to return to normality, and then fucking it up. After a pandemic that his people orchestrated and delivered punishing economic blows, he had the advantage of running against an incumbent already bearing the shame of one of his 2 impeachments, who kept the nation in a constant state of psychological angst with his Twitter feed, and whose musings over injecting disinfectant as a cure for the pink pox reflected as botching the worst public health emergency in a century, which again was a complete and total fabrication by CNN and the mainstream media. But that return to normality Biden vowed to deliver has been elusive amid an economy that remains challenging for many Americans. If Biden faces Trump next year in an electoral rematch, even if Trump is running for president, it's going to be a slaughter. Some of the internal logic of the last race could still apply. Trump has alienated moderate suburban swing voters in the past, and there are a few signs the twice indicted former president has tried to moderate his brashness to appeal to them going forward, so not being the alternative might work for Biden one last time. I think that's actually going to work against him this time. Look, 2 things with this. Number 1, Biden is using Trump's campaign. When Trump campaigned both in 2016, not so much in 2020, although he'd like to pull out a lot of the radical Democrats And I'm not them, so vote for me because I'm not them. And it's still something that he's been doing. The radical left-wing agenda that's coming after your kids and emptying your wallets. Vote for me because I can stop that. I'm not going to be like them. But Biden is, again, plagiarizing and using the exact same platform. Hey, man, just vote for me, man, because I'm not that dude over there. That's the only reason you should vote for me, man. Come on, man. Which, if they hate Trump so much, why are they using his platform? But that's what Bidenomics is. That's what every campaign and platform and plank that Biden puts out is vote for me, I'm not Trump. Because that's all that he has. And honestly, again, this is the second point that I talked about a second ago. This might actually work against Biden because, coming into the end of the Trump year, we knew what Trump was going to be. That it was going to be a nonstop chaos of bad tweets and the mainstream media finding anything that they could push to make into a scandal and bringing it out to the forefront and then talking about it for days on end until the next thing they could jump up and grab as a scandal was. And we don't necessarily have that with the Biden admin. I mean, it's there, but they keep covering it up by other stuff. But, I mean, what do you sit there and think when your wages went up 3% and your grocery bill went up 12%? Wouldn't you rather have the alternative? Vote for me. I'm not that guy. And one of the interesting parts of this race, especially with the way that Biden is doing it, is number one, he's going under the assumption that his opponent is going to be Donald Trump, which I think is a realistic assumption at this point. Yes, even if he has to run from a prison cell, I think that that's going to be his opponent. But he's running under the assumption that he can go to the finish line by hiding in the basement and then screaming, "Hey, vote for me, I'm not that guy. Look how chaotic this guy is." If this was a non-incumbent, or if this was a race against a non-incumbent, which Trump is still technically an incumbent, I think this would come out considerably differently. And honestly, I think Biden would be slaughtered, full and outright. Because there are a lot of people that are looking at this and saying that anything is better than Biden, but they have some hesitancy based on the mostly artificial chaos of the Trump presidency. And I've said before, I won't vote for Trump the third time. I had a big problem with his spending. But that doesn't mean that I can't sit here and objectively analyze and say that he's got a really good chance of winning, even without my vote. Just based on the gas prices alone. But that is what we have for that. But as long as we're talking about Bidenomics, LogicBot gives us a song. Although I think he messed up on the meter. I think if he took the that's out of the three lines that have that's in there, it would have fit the song that he's been trying to go for better than what he's doing. But when inflation's sky high and your savings go dry, Bidenomics. When you never decline to fund Ukraine's front line. I kind of missed the meter on that one too. Bidenomics. Thank you, LogicBot 3000. And honestly, I wanted to just touch on this because this is actually a non-story. But it's being hyped as if it was a story. From Axios, Biden has started using a CPAP machine for sleep apnea. I mean, he's already not getting oxygen to his brain. But they're trying to explain away the marks on his cheek. My third fiancée had sleep apnea. She used a CPAP, although she never used it over at my place. She only used it when she was still at her parents' house. And we got close to moving in together, but we didn't cross the finish line on that one. And it's no big deal. I think some, 10% of the population has this. Biden has recently started to use a CPAP machine to treat his sleep apnea, the White House confirmed on Wednesday. Since 2008, the president has disclosed his history with sleep apnea and thorough medical reports. He used a CPAP last night, which is common for people with that history, White House spokesman Andrew Bates said in a statement. Biden started using the machine recently to improve his sleep quality, per a White House official. Previous medical records from 2008 show that Biden had a recurring issue with sleep apnea, a common condition in which your breathing stops and restarts many times while you sleep, per the National Institutes of Health. My most recent girlfriend thinks that I might have that too, actually. But she broke up with me, so I never got a follow-up on that. Biden started using the machine recently to improve his sleep quality, per a White House official. Well, it's kind of putting lipstick on a pig at this point, though, too, because, there's nothing in the world where more oxygen to that guy's brain is going to improve anything, or more sleep at night. White House physician Kevin O'Connor in February wrote that Biden is fit for duty, which kind of goes along with what Mr. Scott just said, that O'Connor is a liar, in a medical memo after the president underwent his annual physical examination. Let's talk about the Parkland verdict. We actually just might finish everything up today, because we're close. Parkland shooting verdict. School security officer Scott Peterson acquitted over failure to confront gunman. Okay, so he's not going to go to prison, but he should still honestly be run out of his community. That's unacceptable, dude. Your job as a resource officer is literally to protect kids, and you failed to do so. No job, no pension, and shun from your community. I don't necessarily know that going to prison for being a coward is appropriate, but you should not be allowed back in that community. From Myrna Al-Sharif and David K. Lee. A Florida jury on Thursday cleared a former school security officer who was charged over failing to confront a gunman who massacred 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018 in an emotional trial that left bitter feelings on both sides. Scott Peterson, who was a Broward County deputy and worked as a resource officer at Parkland, was charged in 2019 with 7 counts of neglect of a child and 3 counts of culpable negligence and 1 count of perjury. He was found not guilty on all counts. As the first acquittals were announced, an emotional Peterson put his head down onto the defense table and openly wept. The charges carried a maximum potential sentence of 96.5 years in state prison, the Broward County State Attorney's Office said. And again, this callow individual is going to walk out of this courtroom. He's probably never going to be in a uniform with a badge ever again, which is a good thing. But he'll still get full pension, full benefits for the rest of his life that he definitely doesn't deserve because this is a coward. I don't think 100 years in prison is an appropriate punishment for being a coward. But maybe not letting him be in your community anymore is. For shame. For shame. Eric Adams got the news. New York City Mayor Eric Adams berates woman after question about high rent. I'm a grown man. From Thomas Catenacci. Democrat New York City Mayor Eric Adams berated a woman who asked him a question about high rent at a community event on Wednesday, saying she treated him like someone on the plantation. Don't go down that road, Eric. It is not going to end well for you. Adams' rant came in response to a woman who had interjected during his comments at a community conversation town hall in Manhattan. The woman had interrupted his remarks and accused the mayor of raising New York City rent and supporting increases. Well, no, the market raises the rent, not Eric Adams. Action and inaction play a part in that, especially coming from the mayor's office, but market value and rent control. If you're going to ask a question, don't point at me and don't be disrespectful to me, Adams told the woman. I'm the mayor of the city. Treat me with the respect I deserve to be treated. I'm speaking to you as an adult, although I'm acting like a child. Don't stand in front like you're treating someone that's on the plantation that you own. Give me the respect I deserve and engage in the conversation up here in Washington Heights. He talked to a constituent as if she was a slave owner. And the worst part is, she's a tenant advocate number one, which is supposed to be like one of the highest holy jobs in the Democratic Activist Party, but also who fled Nazis, which means that she's also untouchable. From Stephen Fago and Alex Oliveira. The woman who Eric Adams compared to a plantation owner during a fiery town hall exchange on Wednesday is a decades-long tenant advocate who's lived in New York City since she and her parents left Europe, fleeing from Nazis. Jeannie Dumnow, an assistant professor of biology at Rutgers, told the Post that Adams' comments about her were merely a deflection to avoid accountability for his policies. The main point is that the mayor has shown that he's the enemy of the rent-stabilized tenants in New York City, she said. You know, Mayor Adams is a landlord stooge and the enemy of tenants in New York City. He gets millions of dollars from real estate. That's the main issue here. During a town hall at Gregorio Luparian, Dumnow interrupted Adams and accused him of responsibility for the Rent Guidelines Board voting to allow landlords to hike rents on rent-stabilized apartments up to 6%, which actually is quite a bit of money given the fact that you're paying $5,000 to $7,000 a month for an apartment in that city. When Adams insisted he does not control the Rent Guidelines Board, Dumnow didn't back down and shouted while vigorously pointing that he'd previously voiced his support for rent increases. Evidently perturbed, Adam responded, "First, if you're going to ask a question, don't point at me, don't be disrespectful to me." So, and again, Adams doesn't control the rent. He has policies in place. The market, for the most part, drives it. If you can't get people into your apartment, you lower it. If you're getting too many of the wrong tenants or too many people are running for the apartment, you raise the rent because you can make more money off of it. Now, New York has rent control and various other situations in place that make it harder to do so, but also raise the rents to untenable levels regardless, because once the government intervenes, everything becomes more expensive. But they'll sit back and fight over against each other, and nobody's going to win. In today's edition of Who Could Have Seen That Coming, I don't want to leave. Migrants who DeSantis sent to Martha's Vineyard love their new life on the luxury island. I thought they were all gone. Democrats accused Ron DeSantis of kidnapping migrants when he sent 2 planes of migrants to Martha's Vineyard last year. But the New York Times, a former newspaper, recently spoke to some of those migrants who say they're happy about coming to the luxury island and don't want to leave and now call it home. Last September, Florida man sent 49 migrants to Martha's Vineyard, triggering liberal weeping and gnashing of teeth. Democrats claimed the migrants were tricked or deceived and accused DeSantis of kidnapping them. Lawsuits were filed. The Mass U.S. attorney, who resigned in May over allegations of ethics violations and misconduct, promised to investigate to the fullest extent of the law, and the flights ultimately resulted in criminal charges being filed in Bexar County, Texas. The law enforcement refuses to say who was officially charged. What are the migrants saying? Most of the migrants sent to Martha's Vineyard later left, but some stayed and they're happy with their new life. Their lily white neighbors are pretty miserable about it, but they're happy with their new life. Because who could have seen that coming? We're at 151. We've still got things I like and things that I hate. So I'm gonna hold off on these last 2. We'll see if they're still relevant come Tuesday, Wednesday. But we're going to move on to close the show, and we're going to do things that I like and things that I hate, of which I do have quite a bit. So, things that I like tonight. I know, I've got friends that say that women aren't funny. I've always taken it that. I've always been individualistic about this. I've never used the contents of somebody's pants or the color of the skin to determine how I will feel about how they will perform in their specific job. Yes, including humor. But I will say that, and I don't know how Kat Dennings is in real life, and I think that she's kind of a bland character in like the Thor movies and whatnot, but the character that they wrote for her in the show that we're about to watch the trailer for has a direct line to my funny bone. I laughed so hard when I watched this, and I found it on the Roku channel once I activated my Roku over here in the living room. It's something that I'd seen before, but only like a few episodes here and there, and I'm talking, of course, about Two Broke Girls. Something that I can honestly relate to a little bit, because I remember about the time that the show was coming out, where the bottom started to fall out, and people who had a bright future had nothing. Now, obviously not this severe drop of being a billionaire down to living in Williamsburg in an apartment on an illegal sublet, like the main character Caroline does in the show, but definitely something related to when I look and see, okay, how are your creative ways to get around not having any money? And it's nostalgic to look back and remember how it was when any 1 second a wrong move could cost you your job, and now you're sitting here starting to think about, okay, how do I eat? How do I pay rent? So we've got a trailer here. We're going to watch the extended trailer for Two Broke Girls, which I have been laughing profusely about for the last, I would say, 3 weeks or so.
Excuse me. Waitress? Dude?
Hi, what can I get you?
We need something.
Is that annoying? Is that obnoxious and rude? Would you find it distracting if someone did that to you while you were working? Oh, you don't have a job, sorry.
Damn, dude, she burned you.
Oh. No, hipster. No. Do not think we're on the same team. We have nothing in common. I wear knit hats when it's cold out. You wear knit hats because of cold play. And finally, you think this is the sound that gets you service. I think this is the sound that dries up my vagina.
We need horseradish. Please.
That, ladies, is how you treat a waitress. Don't hire a new waitress, okay? I've been doing all the work anyway, and I really could use the extra money.
You need help.
I don't. I've been waiting my whole life, okay? I've waited on tables, I've waited in bars, I've waited on home pregnancy tests.
I already hired a new waitress.
Hi. Not to complain, but this mustard color doesn't really go with my skin tone, neither do the mustard stains. And these various other stains. And smells, I hope that's clam chowder. Let's waitress.
It wasn't clam
Whatever
chowder.
that is, it does not belong in this diner. It belongs in a show on Bravo.
This is Max.
Next stop, Green Point.
Well, I can cross that off my bucket list.
She's a waitress.
Hey, when you get a second, stop looking at my boobs.
This is Caroline.
I'm a really fast learner. I went to Wharton Business School.
Can you make a hot chocolate or not?
She's not.
Nailed it.
The only thing they have in common?
Don't smile, because it raises the bar and then I have to smile and I can't be doing that. It's exhausting and I have a bad back.
They're broke.
What are you, Martin Channing's daughter? You are not! The guy who ripped off the entire city is your father. You're like a billionaire.
Was a billionaire.
Do you know the president?
I've met him.
Do you have a horse?
Yes.
Do you know Paris Hilton?
No, she's 100. I really need this job, okay? We lost all of our money.
Look at that. That girl is working harder than Stephen Hawking trying to put in a pair of cufflinks.
So where do you live?
Our townhouse was taken and bolted up by the bank.
Is this where I'm supposed to feel sorry for you?
A well-adjusted person would.
I'm dead inside.
You make that pretty obvious.
Did you sleep on the subway?
Ah, the taser! Sorry. I didn't think it would hurt so much. It's pink.
It didn't feel like I need a roommate if you want to crash. Bathroom, bedroom, boyfriend sleeps till 4.
Hello?
Oh, hi.
Who are you?
I'm Max's friend.
I'm Robbie.
I'm uncomfortable.
It's cool.
Back up, Jersey Shore. You deserve better than that guy.
Oh, I was just starting to feel sorry for you.
Max, wait.
Oh yeah, that feels so good.
Hi, honey, I'm home. I want you gone by the time I get back.
Babe, I can explain. You weren't supposed to be home.
This isn't what I ordered.
This is Caroline. She may have gotten your order wrong, but she does get some things right. Thank you.
What'd you see in that guy anyway?
He had these muscle thingies.
Oh, those things?
Yeah. I don't know what those are called, but they make smart girls stupid. Tomorrow we can go and get the rest of your stuff.
Everything's locked up.
Well, you have nothing that you care about that we can get?
Well, there is one thing.
Don't get attached.
So, and this came out probably about, they said 12 years ago on this one. About 09 in the bottom of the crash. It's, again, like the inability, the brokenness, that's a bit nostalgic to me at this point based on what I've had to go through in my life and what I am trying desperately to pull myself back out of at this point. But I enjoy it. It's funny. I laugh out loud at it. And if you want to check it out and you've got a Roku, it's on the Roku channel. You're going to have to watch an infinite amount of commercials that'll never stop. But it's free. So if you like it, give it a shot. Let's do some more things that I like here. Freedom is always a fun one for me. And Vanilla the Chimp got his first taste of freedom. It wasn't for very long because he went back to the zoo. But Vanilla the Chimp, caged for entire life, sees Sky for the first time in heartwarming video. From Emily Lefroy. How sweet is the open sky? A touching video caught the first time that Vanilla the Chimp, a 29-year-old survivor of New York's infamous laboratory for experimental medicine and surgery in primates, saw the open sky after arriving at Save the Chimp Sanctuary in Fort Pierce, Florida. And I've got to ask, was Vanilla the Chimp freed by the Coalition for the Liberation of Itinerant Tree Dwellers? Or the CLIT? Which, by the way, is an offshoot of the Liberate Apes Before Imprisoning Apes. LABIA. Is that who liberated Vanilla the Chimp? If you know that reference, Your time in the 2000s was awesome. Vanilla had never been outside of a 5-foot square cage or a garage-sized enclosure until she moved in, and by the looks of it, she is spellbound by her new ape abode. Vanilla lived in the notorious laboratory, which closed in '97 until she was 2. Oh, look at that face. She was then among a group transferred to California, where she was confined to a larger enclosure at a refuge that went out of business in '19 and was threatened by wildfires. Last year, the chimpanzee sanctuary arranged for FedEx to fly her and a group to the 150-acre Sunshine State location. In the heartwarming video, which was shared Friday at Friday's American Society for Primatology Symposium in Reno by Save the Chimps primatologist Dr. Andrew Halloran, she was greeted with a huge hug by the alpha male, Dwight, as she left her enclosure, gazed skyward, and explored her new island. Look, I don't care how dead inside you are. If that doesn't warm you up a little bit, you might want to check your pulse. Other things that I like: anti-oil activists drenched in water by angry residents after protest blocks highway in UK town. From Andrew Chapados. And anti-oil activists were doused with a bucket of water by an angry resident of a UK neighborhood after the group blocked roads during their march, causing a backlog of traffic and enraged motorists. The protesters were from the group Just Stop Oil, according to the Daily Mail, and they were blocking a busy highway in Camden, England. The 6 eco-protesters carried signs that read, "For my family, I won't die quietly," and "New oil equals murder." As work vans and trucks honked their horns at the activists, some cars carefully drove around the group, sometimes shouting expletives at them in British accents. "You limey bastards, get out of the road!" Another person who shouted curse words was a resident of a nearby building who threw a bucket of water directly on the group from a 4th floor balcony. And, well, again, I mean, nobody got hurt. That's the big thing, and with tensions running high, this could have turned out worse. But they got the message, and yeah, if you're going to, like, I do support the right to protest. If it's something that you believe strongly enough in, I also support the right to call these people hippie morons for what they're protesting, but they do have the right to go back out and raise a grievance of that. But the people whose lives they're interrupting to raise their grievances do have the right to also protest their protest, which may involve, again, something where nobody actually got hurt, but still dumping a bucket of water on these morons. Paramount Plus got woke and went broke, and now they're trying to come back off of it. Grease, Star Trek Prodigy, Queen of the Universe, and the game canceled and being removed from Paramount Plus. From Leslie Goldberg. Add Paramount Plus to the list of streamers that have removed content from their platforms in exchange for a tax write-off. The Paramount global-backed streamer has canceled Grease, The Rise of the Pink Ladies, after a single-season reverse decision on its Season 2 pickup for the animated kids-focused Star Trek Prodigy Axe competition series Queen of the Universe after 2 seasons, and nixed a revival of the game after 2 seasons. Additionally, all 4 shows will be removed from Paramount Plus as the conglomerate joins Disney and Warner Brothers in taking tax write-offs for underperforming series. The news comes as Paramount Plus will incorporate Showtime into the platform in the US on Tuesday. Oh, that's kind of cool. So I have Showtime now? Because I have Paramount Plus. That's where I watch all my Trek shows. And a lot of other really good stuff. Like, there's actually some really cool stuff on Paramount Plus. I was tangentially curious, by the way, about the Grease reboot, just to see how much they butchered it. And I've heard that they did, but I'm actually not going to be able to itch my curiosity at this point based on this. Which actually surprises me a lot. Now, typically when we have shows that get piss poor reception, they stop making new episodes. Like, one of my favorites, and I don't understand why this one didn't get picked up for a second season, by the way, but Daybreak over on Netflix, which was fantastic, and it followed the graphic novel actually quite well. And they ended it on a cliffhanger for a second season, but for whatever reason, they just didn't pick it up for its second season. But it's still there. You can still watch the first season. Cowboy Bebop, which failed abysmally because they strayed so far from the source material in such a bad way. Still there. You can still watch it. So, while not diverting funds to prop up failing franchises, I understand. Hit the cancel button because nobody's running out to get a second season of Rise of the Pink Ladies. But it's really like, these things, especially with some of these out here, apparently perform so badly that they need to erase them from existence, which again surprises me quite a bit. Prodigy, I don't know what that's about, honestly. I know that Captain Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, came back and revived her character in a voiceover role for it. I was a little surprised that one was one of them that went. I thought that was actually fairly well received from all the reporting that I've seen of it. A little bit woke, but it's for kids. They're not going to be exploring dark situations like the Dominion War. It's for kids. I don't know what Queen of the Universe is. It looks like drag stuff, honestly. And the game, I don't know what that is either. But they're gone. You can't watch them anymore. I have not seen Strange New Worlds. It's on my list. I'm actually going to watch it. And yes, even for a hate watch, I'm going to watch Discovery and see just how bad it is. And I've read some of the, because sometimes I'll look through the Wikia for Star Trek, and they talk about Discovery, and sometimes they talk about it because it's in the past, from before the Kirk era, and sometimes they talk about it far from the future. So I don't know what it's supposed to be. I'll tell you this, and we've talked about it on things that I liked before, but Lower Decks was hilarious. I'm glad that I sat down and watched Lower Decks. That is a riot. And by the way, I'm hoping before the end of the year, and we'll see how my scheduling goes, because I do work a lot. I do want to see the original series. I have never seen the original Star Trek series or any of the films that spun off from it. And I know from people that tell me about it, they tell me it's a cultural icon and that I should experience it. I have not yet. I'm pushing 40 and I have not seen that yet. Alright, some other things that I like, because we're over the 2-hour mark. Christian leader declares June Fidelity Month instead of Pride Month. Based! From Emily Robertson. A conservative Christian philosopher and Princeton University professor called for the month of June to be recognized and celebrated as Fidelity Month. Yes. Robert P. George launched a website and social media accounts which include Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to spread awareness for the new designation for those who want to celebrate. By the authority vested in me by absolutely nobody, I've declared June to be Fidelity Month, a month dedicated to the importance of fidelity to God, spouses and families, and our country and communities, a message written by the professor reads on the website. The announcement came after George highlighted a recent Wall Street Journal poll indicating a precipitous decline in American beliefs and values pertaining to religion, family, community, and country. That's awesome. That's awesome. One more, and we're only going to do one of these, by the way. I have 3 about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I don't have Mogwai egging me on for this one. But we'll do one of them from Vanity Fair. Marjorie Taylor Greene might get kicked out of her own club, from Eric Lutz. The rise of Marjorie Taylor Greene both symbolized and cemented the staying power of the MAGA right after Trump left office, but now even the extremist Georgia representative is struggling to pass her party's purity test. Tensions have been simmering between Greene, an ardent ally of the former president, and members of the Freedom Caucus since earlier this year when she cast her lot with Kevin McCarthy in his embarrassing but ultimately successful speakership bid. But they've recently begun to boil over as she deepens her alliance with McCarthy, breaks with the Freedom Caucus in some of the high-profile stands, and openly feuds with prominent members like Lauren Boebert, whom she recently called a little bitch during a spat on the House floor. Dude, if she's gonna let me try this again for the stream. If she's gonna get kicked out of the Freedom Caucus, good. I told you to do that 2 years ago. I've never trusted the fidelity of Marjorie Taylor Greene. The thing that's always rubbed me the wrong way about her is she says that thing that makes all the Freedom Caucus people all feel warm and good inside, but she says it just a little bit too perfectly every time. To the point that it looks like she's planted to go out there and make Republicans look bad. And yeah, she should. Alright, now let's do some things that I hate. First thing that I hate is the ad blocker blocker software on all these websites that I sometimes forget to come back out and refresh over. We're coming for your children chant at New York City drag march elicits outrage, but activists say it's taken out of context. And they got absolutely dragged for this article. From Tyler Kincaid. Over the weekend, a short video circulated widely on social media of an unidentified person at a New York City march during Pride festivities saying, "We're coming for your children." In the 21-second clip circulated by a right-wing web streamer channel, dozens of people march in the streets and are clearly heard chanting, "We're here, we're queer, we're not going shopping." But one voice that is louder than the crowd, which is not clear whose, or whether the speaker was a member of the LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYAEIOU sometimes Y community, is heard saying at least twice, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." Like I've always theorized once they started going towards the kids, I don't know if they're actually into kids or not, but I think a lot of this is them trying to piss off the cons. And it goes back to the stupid song. To conservative pundits, activists, and lawmakers, the video confirmed the allegations that they've levied in recent years that the LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYAEIOU community is grooming children. But to Brian Griffin, not the Beagle, the actual person, the original organizer of the New York City Drag March, if that's the worst that they've heard, it's only because he wasn't there this year. Griffin said he chanted obscene things in the past like "kill, kill, kill, we're coming to kill the mayor," and joked about pubic hair and sex toys during the march as people at Drag March regularly sing, "God is a lesbian." "It's all just words," Griffin said. "It's all presented to fulfill their worst stereotypes of us." Well, you say that, but this song exists. Which I have queued up because I use it as a sounder all the time.
Progress we've made over these past years, there's still work to be done. So to those of you out there who are still working against equal rights, we have a message for you.
You think we're sinful? You fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. You can keep them from disco, warn about San Francisco. Make him wear pleated pants, we don't care. We'll convert your children. We'll make them tolerant and fair.
At first I didn't get why you'd be so scared.
And the whole song, by the way, goes on to a massive chorus performed by the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. And some fortunate people went and did digging during this and found just how many people in this music video were on the sex offender list. And the worst part of this is, the message of this song is actually innocent, except the fact that they worded it to piss off the cons. They want to talk about making children tolerant and say, hey, just live and let live. But they did it just to spark that little bit of outrage and say, oh, but we're going to convert your children. We're going to make them gay too, or at least get the conservative parents to hear just the chorus, which was the most common spread around. Like, oh, they're coming for our kids, we got to do something. This is disgusting in every single right. But it makes a really good sounder when they actually do things where they're coming for your kids. Other things that I hate today. We have a new Pat Sajak. And I'm going to come out and say that I don't approve. And this is, by the way, coming from somebody, so take this with a grain of salt, who hasn't watched The Wheel since probably 2006, 2007. All about Ryan Seacrest, what to know about Pat Sajak's Wheel of Fortune replacement. Funny that they make this announcement in Pride Month. From Aaron Jensen. Seacrest out. No, Ryan Seacrest is in, the host of The Wheel. The multitasker will replace the show's longtime host, Pat Sajak, who will exit the show at the end of the next season. When Seacrest announced Tuesday that he would replace the retiring host in September of 2024, he referenced a short-lived game show that he hosted in the late 90s. Most people probably don't know this, but one of my first jobs was hosting a little game show called Click for Merv Griffin, also the creator of The Wheel and Jeopardy 25 years ago. Seacrest shared in a statement posted to Instagram, "This is truly a full circle moment for me." Yeah, this guy is kind of everywhere, and I'm not gonna lie, I have like almost no idea who he is. I'm tangentially aware of Seacrest because of, I think, American Idol or America's Got Talent. He was on one of the two of those. So I'm tangentially aware of the guy, but it's one of those names, like, I know it exists, but I know nothing about this person. Except that he's probably going to botch the wheel. We'll see, for whatever reason, also, while we're talking about this, Vanna has retained a lawyer in the wake of Sajak retiring. That woman doesn't age. Part of that is plastic surgery. Vanna White lawyers up after Seacrest named new Wheel host because she hasn't had a raise for 18 years. She's been turning the letter since '82, but she hasn't had a raise since 18 years ago would be 2005. At a paltry $3 million a year. Well, I think it's probably way more than what that job is worth, but, you know, people tune in for Vanna, and again, she somehow never ages, so we'll see how that shakes out. We're gonna skip some of the rest of these here, but I do want to touch on this one just for a moment. From the Blaze, leftists pounce on Senator Rick Scott for advising socialists and communists to stay out of Florida. From Alex Nitzberg. Senator Rick Scott shared a video in which he urged socialists and communists to think twice before venturing into the Sunshine State. The senator suggested that Floridians like freedom and capitalism. I am warning socialists and communists not to travel to Florida. They're not welcome in the Sunshine State, the senator tweeted. Let's listen.
Senator Rick Scott here. Let me give you a travel warning. If you're a socialist, communist, somebody that believes in big government, I would think twice. Think twice if you're thinking about taking a vacation or moving to Florida. We're the free state of Florida. We actually don't believe in socialism. We actually know people, and some people understand lived under it, and we know people lived under socialism. It's not good. It's not good for anybody. So if you're thinking about it, if you think about coming to Florida and you're a socialist or communist, think twice. We like freedom, liberty, capitalism, things like that.
So, the reason I want to touch on this, and I'm against Rick Scott's position, but it became defensible to me the other day when Olbermann actually threw a temper tantrum in a quote tweet on this just over and over, calling him a fascist. When Olbermann throws a temper tantrum against something like this, it actually makes this somewhat defensible. In something that I would consider, under normal circumstances, as a free marketer, as always, to be tremendously stupid. What's one thing about communist money? Two things about communist money. Number one thing about communist money is that they don't have any. But number two is they think nothing about going out and spending the money that they have on things that they don't need. And then expecting the government to come back and bail them out. Why would you turn that away? You've got an army of stupid people who want to be able to go back and take pictures and take souvenirs home of their vacation in Florida, sunny Florida, and how they're going to go back down there and give the finger to Ron DeSantis and then go to Disney World. What's the first rule of acquisition? Let me remind you. We'll come back down here. We'll pull up the rules of acquisition just for this. The first rule of acquisition, once you have their money, you never give it back. And number two, especially with people who are willing to go back and spend money, and spend because they think that the government will just print more, the best deal is the one that brings the most profit. Their money spends exactly the same as everybody else's. And you get to laugh at them while they're there. Separate them from their money, send them back home to mommy and daddy, and count and count and count and count. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And also, greed is eternal. I have disarmed Rick Scott's position in 4 rules of acquisition. But with that, I'm actually going to head out of here for the night. We're almost at the 2.5 hour mark. And I do have to get some things done here before I take off, because I'm hoping to be up and out by 4 o'clock tomorrow in the morning. Especially I hear there's a video game bar that's going to be going on tomorrow night. I hope I can. I didn't sleep much last night, so it might be difficult, but I also just slept on the couch before we got started with the Contemporary. So, don't worry, before we go, the audio platform will be up. And by the way, if you guys want to check that out, Spotify, one of the best places to get it from. You can get it from Podbean's internal player. Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can check us out on all those. Or the replays on YouTube, on Rumble, on Odyssey. They still go over there, or over on the Facebook page as well. But let's throw up some outro music and let's head out of here. Reminder, no show tomorrow, no show on Monday. Those will both be transit days. Monday show might, maybe, we'll see. Maybe something will pop up here, and all of a sudden it's 6 o'clock or 7 Eastern time. You'll get an alert that said that J. Edgar 101 has gone live, and you won't know why, and it won't be me sitting in there either. But with that, we're going to head out of here for the night. Thank you, everybody who came by, hung out, chatted in the live chat, everybody who watched, everybody who lurked, everybody who's probably hammered listening to this right now. We'll be back here on Tuesday, the 4th of July, to see what happened over the weekend, over the long weekend. Catch up on some news. We might just have a chat show too, if it's really, really slow over the weekend. But we will see what happens with that. Come back in and join me here for that. I promise we'll get done before fireworks. Otherwise, our regular show will be back here on Wednesday. We'll see what's happening in the news for that. I'm sure that they'll find something to argue and fight about by that point, so come back and join us there. If you are on Twitch, stick around. We're going to go find somebody to raid. Otherwise, we will see you here on Tuesday or Wednesday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am J. Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.